problem began around 1803, after Jefferson made the Louisiana Purchase.
Give people the chance to expand westward.
People began to move west past the Mississippi in hundreds, but there was a problem.
There were still local populations of Indians in many of the areas being populated. One of those populations was the Cherokee.
The Cherokee had a reservation in Georgia, and under law, could not be forcibly removed by the state, even if the state really wanted to.
Georgia really wanted them out, and in 1830, Georgia basically told the Cherokee that they were no longer a sovereign nation.
Georgia probably thought the Cherokee wouldn't care, or know better, but they were wrong.
In part, because of Samuel Worcester.
Worcester was brought down to the Cherokee lands as a missionary. However, he became much more.
He became friends with the Cherokee leaders and began to inform them of their constitutional rights.
It turns out the Cherokee didn't like having things taken from them, so they went to court, the Supreme Court.
This became known as the Cherokee Nation versus Georgia case, and it said only the national government can make such rulings, and struck down Georgia.
Georgia didn't like this, but still had a bigger problem to deal with: the Cherokee in this time. The relationship was even worse than before.
Georgia realized that people, such as Worcester, were causing problems and made all white people receive a permit before entering the Cherokee property.
Since the Cherokee were good friends with Worcester, they hired lawyers to repeal the ruling, and their case went to the Supreme Court.
The decision. The case started February 20th, 1832, and was led by Justice John Marshall.
The case only lasted about 2 weeks, and the results did not please Georgia.
The court ruled that keeping non-Indians off of Indian land was unconstitutional, and that Worcester was free.
It also ruled that affairs between the United States and the native tribes had to be handled by the federal government, and that the Cherokee were a sovereign nation.
This was a very unpopular decision, and President Andrew Jackson was even quoted, although maybe incorrectly, as saying, "John Marshall has made his decision. Now let him enforce it."
However, this decision may have been made because Marshall felt guilty about another case where he had made a bad ruling.
Marshall sent in a letter to his wife saying, "Thanks be to God, the court can wash their hands clean of the inequity of oppressing the Indians and disregarding their rights."
Even though Marshall made this ruling, it still did little in the removal of the Indians in the following years.
After the court, Georgia did nothing. They didn't release the prisoners.
Prisoners were released, however, but almost a year later and after a new governor.
Worcester continued to help the Cherokee, but little happened.
As Jackson said, the court was going to have trouble enforcing the ruling, and they did.
It has clearly been seen the continued imprisonment of Worcester, but also in the imprisonment of others after the court decision was put into effect.
Jackson and Georgia proved that the judiciary branch had almost no power.
Aside from his quote saying that the court couldn't enforce the ruling, he also did not like the ruling.
He wasn't in favor of the ruling so much that less than 5 years later, he signed into effect a plan to remove the Indians. The Trail of Tears.
Now, that is the end of our show. Thank you for being with us. I'm Ron Burgundy. And remember, rule number 1, always have salon quality hair.
Hi, I'm
Just be
Paul.
like